Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review and reaction to Ted Lasso Season 3, Episode 7, which, just entering it, let's just say the expectations for this one are probably just sort of like atmospheric. I think the Amsterdam episode, Sunflowers, based on the comments that you guys left last week and the internet in general, I
Mhm.
think this is one of America's favorite episodes of Ted Lasso.
It was excellent.
Yeah,
It's hard when you raise the bar that
yeah.
high that the next episode is also then you just got to keep riding the wave kind of thing, and it's very very difficult.
There are some moments in this episode that I will say from the start, I love the music choices through a lot of this. I love I love Nate's storyline with Jade.
I love it. Oh my goodness. Listen, we all knew that Nate was going to be on a redemption arc. We knew it was coming. He's done some stuff that we're all like, "Oh, Nate, no, no. Nate, come on, man." But, he is a good guy inside. He's just a guy who really doesn't like himself. But there was a big turning point in this episode. And you know what? I'm every put on your
Oh
hard
boy.
hat already. I'm here for the redemption arc. I wasn't before, but
Yeah.
and now I'm like, let's ride this ride.
Why are you guys making me love Nate again? What are you gonna do to me later on? No, but we'll talk all about that. There's a pretty big beef I have though about the show and Ted and where things are right now with Ted, and we're gonna get into all of that. But of course, before we go any further, go ahead, hit that subscribe
Yeah.
button. Don't make me blow the whistle at you, and by that I just mean saying whistle instead of actually blowing the whistle. But yeah, hit that subscribe button because we're covering so many different things right now with Succession, Yellow Jacket, Survivor. It's a very busy time here at the channel.
Absolutely. And be sure to continue leaving your comments. Don't hush your butts. Leave the comments for us because we've been having a really fun time having a discussion with you guys. And also, if you want to learn a little bit more about Matt
Yes.
and I away from YouTube, head over to our Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. We've got some cool pictures up from the weekend over there. So give us a follow over there.
Let's start with the bait. Okay, now before I get into the stuff with Ted, should I go get some red string and tie that?
Oh,
Because that may be what
I
happens to me in the comments after this.
Oh my goodness,
Okay,
no, no. Oh my god. That
beat.
red string. Okay, before you get into
Okay,
your
just
beef, that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I was on the floor. I almost fell out of my chair on that. It was so well done.
I love it though when he was just sort of like, Roy, is this the purpose you wanted to get out of it? And he's just like, kind of, and he's just laughing to himself the whole time like a maniac.
Snickering. I was
I
dying.
know.
Oh, so funny.
Okay. So from joy to not joy. Okay,
Woo.
here we go. Ted, we need to figure things out here with your son in the end game of this show because we are past the halfway point now in the final season. And I think, listen, I think from the beginning of this season and even before that, we've all kind of had a general sense as to where Ted Lasso, the show, is going to end. It
Mhm,
is going to end with Ted going back home and being with his son Henry. That
mhm,
has it's just impossible to envision anything else because even as far back as season 2, it was really hard to continue to reconcile this idea that here is good guy Ted with this team helping all these people, but he is infinitely far away from his son, and we know he wants to be with his son. He talks to
mhm,
his son all the time. Like
mhm.
all that is there, but the show isn't really moving, I think, that forward fast enough in a way that actually makes me think that this end is going to come around and it's going to totally make complete sense with everything that we have seen on screen. Now, maybe I will be proven wrong over the next few episodes and they will really get things in motion, but it's obvious that he needs to be at home with his son. But I think for the character and the story, there need to be specific personal milestones and reasons laid out, and we're not really getting to those yet, where it feels like this is the right time for him to go home as opposed to any other time that he should have gone home.
Yeah, I think a big problem with this whole thing is that they're not just saying if this is the final season or not. I mean, it's kind of like yes, this was written to be like an end to this story.
Yeah.
Okay, but is it the end of the show? Could there be something else with Ted? Like what are you guys doing? We're on episode 7
Yeah.
now. We don't know if this is actually the end or not. No one has been clear about that. So if we are gearing up to that inevitable end that Ted will go home to be with his son. I mean, he's been away. He's a good dad, but he's been away from his son for a long time. And yes, parents have to travel for work all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like we all kind of know that that ending is coming, where it's like the team is on good footing. Ted feels really good about where everything is. He hands the pretend whistle over to Roy and is like, "You got this, kid." And then he goes home to his son. It feels like the right ending if this is where it's going to end. It's the final season. There's not going to be any more of it. That's where it's going. But we're on episode 7. So,
Yeah.
like, where is starting to, like, let's move the train more towards that, where he obviously has a need inside of him to want to be home with his son.
Yeah.
Love. He misses him. He loves him. His son misses him and loves him too. He's been away quite a while and he's done the best that he can with long distance. But long distance isn't the same as having your dad there or having your son there and being part of their lives every day, right? So that is something that needs to be shown a little bit more, in my opinion, on the show, so that when he does get to sort of that final win and oh man, the team is doing so good, I feel good enough to go home, that there just needs to be a little more of a draw.
It's just the other thing that's sort of on my mind with a lot of it is, they've introduced this Dr. Brianson, and we've had certainly our feelings about him very clear, and how it feels like a total mistake that, they've set Michelle up with, their former therapist and all that other sort of stuff.
Mhm.
But if this ends up being a situation where Ted is just sort of like, oh, I need to be back home because, this other guy is around, and so much of the emotion that they've sort of put on the show right now is negative towards this Dr. Brianson character and all of that, then it seems like Ted is going back for like a competitive reason.
Mhm.
And I think it needs to be a positive reason. I think it needs to be separate from everything that's going on with Michelle and her personal life. And I think it needs to be something that is kind of warm and wholesome and gives us a hug. And it's just we're not at that point with the hug yet. That is my Ted Lasso soapbox, as much as I love Ted and the show.
No, there needs to be that draw of love. He's not going to come back because of this doctor's hanging around. He's not coming back for Michelle. He's going to be coming back for his son because he feels like he's done what he can here and his heart aches to be with his
Yeah.
child. And we know that it's there, but we haven't seen as much of that this season. We did have the other storyline with Henry where he was kind of getting into like a negative headspace and Ted was there to help him out of it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be more of that, but something that's just more love, because this is a positive show where, I want to see Ted's heart aching for his son a little bit.
Yeah. Now, we've dove in to everything with that. And of course, we will read all your comments about this.
Absolutely. Don't hush your butts.
Oh, boy. Okay. Now, I just want to go back into Nate again because this story just makes me happy. And there are two things that I think this episode did with Nate that were really, really cool and meaningful and interesting. One of them is small. The fact that he has his version of Siri saying Wunderkind
I know.
instead of Wonder Kid. It is just like he has taken such offense to this. And I think it's like a perfect reflection of the problem with Nate the character is there's two different versions of him in a way. There is the Nate that he sees himself as and
Mhm.
the Nate that other people see of him. And he gets so frustrated, and I think he gets so in his head that this Nate that other people see isn't good enough, isn't important enough, that he gets so insecure and he lashes out because he thinks that is going to be the thing that
Yeah.
changes it to where he sort of becomes the Nate that he knows that he is, and everybody will just see him and love him for that. And that's why he got into his other ritual with the mirror in the past because he was sort of taking out that aggression on that version of himself that
Mhm.
nobody seemed to like, and he needed to present himself as something else.
Yeah, and that's why it was so wonderful in this arc. The moment that just got me was seeing him go to ask out Jade, go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
and instead of going through his normal ritual of hating on himself, he smiled at himself. And that was like it was such a turning moment for that character that I think a lot of the people out there, including myself, that were like, "Oh man, Nate, how could you?"
Yeah.
That now it is turning around to be like, "Oh man, he's like he really is getting past that with himself." And I think a thing that really helped him as well was that conversation with his mom, who was, his dad always seems to come across as like a little bit more closed off, a little more
Yeah.
cold, where his mom's like, "Oh no, your dad used to be romantic. This is what happened. This is how he asked me out, folding out this map with all these little, things on it. And will you go out with me?" And I think it was the first time that Nate had this moment where he realized that him and his dad do actually have something in common, that they are both soft-hearted for the people that they love, that they're interested in, that is a commonality between them. And I think that's what gave him that moment where he didn't, come down on himself and he smiled at himself.
There is so much I think to be hopeful about with Nate. He
Yeah.
smiles at himself. He doesn't get discouraged in the most tragic scene possible when his
Oh.
gift gets run over in the process. Is this is such a clumsy thing. This feels like this is something that I would do. So I felt a lot for Nate in that moment. And then when he goes on the date with Jade at the end, you're not wearing your soccer outfit. So congratulations to you, Nate. You dressed like a
No.
normal, like
He
a
looked great.
yeah, he did. He looked very handsome, very put together. He admitted he was nervous. He was honest with her,
Yep.
and that is where full tinfoil hat time, everybody.
Oh.
This is how Nate's story is going to end. I'm going to tell everybody right now, and then Sudeikis is going to come with the red string and attack me for ruining the end of his show. Okay, now here's where we're going: is that Nate? He's in this environment at West Ham where Rupert and everybody else, like, he's a puppet. And so they're just sort of, putting their hand up there and having him do whatever it is that they want. And I think ultimately, though, he's going to have Jade come around at some point because he really cares about her. And I think he
Mhm.
takes great pride in his work. And I don't think he's going to necessarily like break all of his old habits right away. But I think she's going to see him in this environment and be sort of like, Nate, this isn't you. And I don't think she's going to be like super verbose about it or anything. She's kind of a
She's not.
character that's not really
Yeah.
her. But I think she's going to indicate to him that it's like, who are you in this? Like, we had this dinner. This was a very different side of you. I like this side of you. And I think that plus all of his experiences at Richmond and everything else, it's going to all sort of accumulate in him being like, this environment is really, really bad for me. And you know what? It just isn't worth it. Nobody's gonna like you just because you're a good coach. They'll just pretend to. They like you because you're winning, and that's it.
I have a tinfoil
All
hat
right. I'll keep
theory
mine on.
of where this is going to go with Nate. I do think that something like that is going to happen, that Jade is going to give him a reflection of the self he doesn't like, which is when he's around Rupert and everybody over there, where he is with a bunch of people that aren't the nicest or aren't the greatest, that she will sort of reflect that back a little bit to kind of be like, "Oh, you're part of this crew? I've seen this other side of you, but is this also part of you?" I think that when Ted leaves, he's going to go and ask Nate to come back to Richmond and actually be a coach there with Roy.
I think that makes a heck of a lot of sense. I mean, Nate is a very good coach that has
Yes.
been established. The only issue that Nate really has is he doesn't have any sort of like, this is a mixed metaphor, but any bedside manner. He doesn't know how to actually speak to anybody and be kind and caring and empathetic. But if he can learn all of that, if he can get better at all of that, and, he'll have Roy there who will call him out on whatever at any given
Yes.
point, that can really, really work. And I think it would be a complete arc for him. And, regardless of whether or not this is the final season or ending they have planned or whatever other stuff they want to throw out there, we got to build towards something that's, you can't leave a lot of loose ends at the end of all this, right?
Okay, let's talk about Rebecca briefly
Okay.
because she wasn't in this episode as much as she was in the last episode with everything with Boatman.
Yeah.
So we've seen all your comments. There's a lot of people out there that think that she's going to get pregnant by Boatman. And
Yeah.
she ended up mentioning to Keely this experience that she had. However, it was more along the lines of what you said. So there was a lot of discussion about whether or not they actually slept together or not. And I've spoken to a couple of you guys in the comments. I still stand by where I am with this, is that if they had this wonderful night together and the whole purpose of it was to send Rebecca back feeling this way about herself, where she's like, yeah, I had this wonderful night. It was really respected. I was, he was very kind to me. I felt like I was treated the way that I should. And she even said it to Keely, like, our connection transcended sleeping together. There was something more, which was what you were kind of saying when Boatman said no to her. No, we didn't end up going to bed together. And then later was like, yes, we did. And a lot of people have taken it literally. And if it is true that Rebecca had all these drinks and then passed out, he knows how many she had. It was a lot. We all watched it. He watched it. And she passed out on this couch and he puts the blanket on her. Even if she got up and went to his room, I think he would have said no. And that makes more sense for this story to go forward. If not, and he went to bed with her and then she got up the next day and was like, oh man, I was so out of it. I can't even remember what happened. That if he's then like, no, we didn't do it, then he lies to her. So he's like, been with her while she's so blacked out and then is like, lies and sends her on her way. I was just like, no, it just ruins the whole thing. And especially with this episode where she's pouring out her heart to Keely and it's just like, man, it transcended that. Like, it would have been nice if we had done something like that, but you know what? We didn't, and this was even better. And I really hope that's where they go with it. I don't want her to like wake up one day and she's like, oh, I'm pregnant by the guy who lied to me. Cool.
I'm going to say this right now. If they do that, that's a really bad mark on this show's legacy.
It's very dark.
I would have a really hard time with it because that's not the show that this is. Like, that, I mean, there are terrible things that happen in the real world all the time, but I think Ted Lasso as a show, it tries to be more hopeful and more optimistic, and it's just really far off the tone of the show. And I really, really hope they don't go there and that this is just the situation of her learning something about herself, her moving that forward. Like there was a little bit of fun Rebecca and Sam stuff with Sam's father showing up and being just like, oh, I've heard a lot about you from Sam, and just her reaction, his reaction, and then eventually them just being like, oh, Richmond, they're playing. Like, let's just watch this now.
Okay, so let's also talk about Keely and what's going on with her and Jack. So we had this conversation with Rebecca where Rebecca's putting her own experiences out there, where we have Jack is like, she's at the beginning of a relationship, but we've all been there where it's like you're at the beginning, you want to show somebody how much you like them. So, there's lots of different ways to show your affection or that you're falling for someone, sending them flowers or, writing little love notes or doing everything you can to just make that person know that you're interested, that you care. And it's always over the top at the beginning of a relationship. But Rebecca's like, oh, you better, just watch out because Rupert did this to me too. And look how that turned out. And it's like, okay, that might not be what's happening here. Like, Jack hasn't really done anything to, at least me as a watcher, think that that's what she's doing. Filling her office with flowers. We have to remember she's like richer than God, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way that she's able to express how she feels. It is one of the love languages, which is gift giving and trying to make somebody happy by, oh, your favorite flowers, daisies? I'm going to buy you all the daisies. I don't know. I don't think that there's anything that's kind of dark going on with that.
I just think Rebecca's projecting, and I think she's afraid. She's wanting to look out for her friend, but every relationship is different, right? And so there is a chance that things will work out very differently. Like the only reason I struggle with the storyline is just because I like Keely and Roy so much, and I want them to be together. But like Roy's story at the moment is mostly just training Jamie and just ordering everybody around at the team. He doesn't have that much else going on right now, and maybe that will change down the road, maybe not. Like,
it's back to sort of what we were talking about. Is this the final season, or is there something else coming after this? Because if this is the final season, if Keely and Roy are going to be kind of getting back together, there's not that many episodes left. Like, get the train rolling.
finally, Sam Obisanya, one of my favorite characters on this show. Like, I love how big his heart is. I care for this guy so much. And man, what a roller coaster I went on with this storyline, because the scene of him hugging his father, like, was the closest I got to tearing up on it's like in between this and like Roy hugging Jamie in season 2. Just like the hugs just break me on Ted Lasso. The biggest issue I have with this storyline mostly is just that, Sam puts out this tweet about this home secretary and, her policies, which are awful. And ultimately she comes back using a phrase that has been used in America on television in the past to refer to athletes. And it's just, I wish they had come up with a separate phrase that was specific for this show, because it just, for me as a viewer, it took me a little bit out of this show, and it made me focus on something that was going on in real life. And I think thematically, you want to do that. You want to be topical. This is a very important story to tell. I just wish they had used a slightly different phrase there. That way, I didn't exclusively think of a past event, and instead I was still fully in the world of Ted Lasso, because there were serious things happening to Sam and to his restaurant and to, what was going on with him and Simi, which, by the way, what is their relationship? Are they together? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, this show isn't really sort of ripping from the headlines of things, that other people have said and elsewhere, that it will get onto things that are more topical, and it still is topical, where it's sort of like, performers, actors, musicians, people in sports, anyone that's doing something like that it's like, all your job is to entertain me. Don't talk about anything else, which is ridiculous. I mean, everybody's people. Everybody has a right to their opinion and should say what they feel. Like, how else do you even really get to know anybody, right? You don't know where they stand. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So it's important that they did talk about this and bring up this very topical thing that is still going on. But yes, I do wish that they had kind of made it their own, instead of taking from a very specific thing that happened already.
Now for the weirdest segue ever, as we tie everything up here. Coach Beard, get some help. Go to Dr. Sharon. Talk to somebody. You don't need to read about that. Just walk away, Beard. Walk away.
That's the thing. This is okay. Here's a controversial take.
All right,
Everybody put your hard hat on. We're 23 minutes in. If you're still watching, welcome. So
just
the episode that was all about Coach Beard and his night out or whatever is my least favorite episode. Everything before that episode with Coach Beard, I just loved, because he was just such like an enigma. You didn't really know enough about him, or sort of, he would throw out these little things that would be just strange enough that you'll wish you kind of knew more about it. This is gonna be a weird crossover, but he kind of reminds me of Parker over on NCIS, which is a show we used to cover here, but we haven't for a while. But he will throw out these little lines of these things that he'll say that you're kind of like, I wish I knew the whole story of like where that's coming from. But your imagination has to put it all together. And that's what Coach Beard used to be like until that episode. Since that episode, and especially this season, I feel like they're trying too hard with this character, like with the piggy Stardust, and they've got him all dressed up with the pig nose and everything that's going on, and what went on in this episode. That it feels like they're throwing things in there to be kind of surprising and shocking, but they're not doing it in the really slick, creative way that they used to do it with him.
I just have the big problem because I just don't think Jane treats him well. And I'm just sort of like, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be with this person. She's not nice to you. Why are you with this person? And it just sort of, I don't know, it drives me up the wall. But anyway, we're done with Ted Lasso for this week. We don't have that much more of the season or series, who knows, left.
Who knows?
So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you here next time.